It's early morning in ancient Greece. The sky is still tinged with purple. A cold wind snakes down from Mount Parnassus. The marble columns of the temple shimmer faintly with dew, and beneath them, silence, heavy, sacred. You're here, alone. Or are you? Somewhere deep within the temple, a woman is breathing, slowly, deliberately. She has fasted for days, bathed in the Castalian Spring, chewed the sacred laurel. She has spoken no word to another soul since dawn, and now she lowers herself into the chasm. This is not a metaphor. Beneath the temple of Apollo lies a fissure in the earth, a natural cleft that exhales a mysterious gas, a vapor said to carry the voice of the gods. And she is the mouthpiece. They call her Pythia, the Oracle of Delphi. Soon people will come, kings, generals, poets, criminals. They will bow, they will beg, they will offer treasures, sacrifices, prayers, all for a glimpse into the unknown. And she will give them answers, words she does not choose, words that erupt from her throat in strange syllables, words she herself may never remember. But they will believe them because they don't come from her, they come from Apollo. Or so they believe. You're about to enter the mind of this woman, but be warned, it is no ordinary mind. It is one caught between earth and sky, reason and madness, power and fragility. You may not leave the same. Imagine for a moment that you were born in 480 BCE in a small mountain village. A girl, one of many, nothing special, but one day a vision or a seizure, a dream that predicts a death or a harvest or a flood. Your family hates it. They fear it. Then they take you to Delphi. The priests examine you, test you, watch your movements, listen to your tone. You are chosen. Your name will be forgotten by history, but your voice will shake empires. This is not a fantasy. Delphi was real. The oracle was real. For over 1,000 years, the Pythia delivered prophecies from this mountain, longer than the Roman Empire itself lasted. Her temple was the spiritual heart of the ancient world. People believed she spoke the will of the gods. But who was she really? A mystic? A madwoman? A puppet? Or something far more complex? That's what we're here to answer. Because to understand the Oracle of Delphi is to understand something deeper than history. It is to confront the oldest desire in the human soul, to know what comes next. We live in a world of forecasts and predictions, algorithms and analytics, but none of it satisfies the primal craving that burned inside those who climbed this mountain 2,000 years ago. They wanted to know if they would live, if they would win, if they would be remembered. And so they turned to a woman breathing fumes in the dark. A woman who sat in a trance, eyes rolled back, body trembling, voice distorted, and yet held more influence than any general or king. Not because she was powerful, but because she was believed. Here's what you won't find in textbooks. The oracle didn't just speak, she became something else. Her identity was stripped away, layer by layer. Her thoughts dissolved, her ego disintegrated. She became, in the eyes of the ancients, a vessel, an empty bowl for divine wine, a flute through which Apollo played his sacred tune. But what did that do to her mind? What did she feel when the god entered her? Was it ecstasy, terror, dissociation, or all of them at once? This is what we'll explore tonight. The rituals, the psychology, the fear, the faith, the secrets behind the veil of smoke, and the inner world of a woman who, for a brief moment, spoke with the voice of a god. Because tonight, you're not just watching history, you're descending with her into the chamber, into the dark, into the mind of the oracle. Are you ready? Take a deep breath. The smoke is rising. The road to Delphi winds up like a serpent up the craggy slopes of Mount Parnassus. You feel it in your legs, the burn of the climb, the thinness of the air. But more than that, you feel it in your chest, the weight of the moment, the hushed reverence, the sense that you're approaching something sacred, ancient, and dangerous. You're not alone. Pilgrims are everywhere, some barefoot, some cloaked in linen dyed with rare purples and reds. A few walk in silence, others murmur prayers, and a few weep. Because Delphi is not just a place, it's a crossroads, a last hope, the end of a desperate journey. You pass through the sacred precinct, a kind of spiritual fortress. Stone walls rise around you. Trees cast long shadows. Birds are strangely quiet. This is the domain of Apollo, and Apollo demands awe. The first thing you notice is the treasuries, miniature temples lining the sacred way, each built by a different city-state to house their offerings. Corinth, Athens, Sparta. Gold gleams from within them. Silver, ivory, victory statues, weapons taken in war, shields offered in thanks. Each one says, "Look at what we gave. Look at what we won." But they are also messages to the oracle. Speak well of us. You climb higher, heart racing, until finally the temple of Apollo appears before you. Its columns reach skyward like ribs of a giant creature. At its center is a bronze tripod, a flame that never goes out, and behind its doors, sealed to most, is the Adoton, the most secret place, where the oracle sits, where the earth speaks. We are not going in yet, because before she speaks, she must be prepared. And so must you. Let's step back for a moment. Who is Apollo? And why does he need a woman to speak for him? Apollo is a paradox. He is the god of music and poetry, yes, but also of plague and punishment. He is the bringer of light and the guardian of shadow. He kills without remorse, yet heals with a touch. His arrows can strike from a distance, fast, silent, fatal. He is the god of reason, and yet he chose a trance-ridden woman to be his voice. This contradiction is no accident. Delphi thrives in the in-between, logic and madness, sky and underworld, male and female. The rationality of Apollo is funneled through the raw, unfiltered psyche of a woman in altered states. That's the secret. Delphi is not clean, it's not orderly, it is liminal. As you move through the sanctuary, you begin to see symbols everywhere. The omphalos, navel of the world, said to mark the center of the earth. The tripod, sacred to Apollo. The laurel wreath, symbol of truth and purification. But there is another symbol, more disturbing. A python, coiled, sleeping, watching. Before Apollo claimed Delphi, the myth goes, this place belonged to a monstrous serpent, Python, a child of the earth goddess Gaia. It guarded the navel of the world. It was ancient, chthonic, female, and Apollo, young and golden, killed it. Or so the story says. But symbols have long memories. Even after its death, the spirit of the python lingered beneath the temple, in the very fumes that rose from the jaws. The Pythia, in fact, is named after it. She does not speak as Apollo. She speaks through the python's breath. The oracle is not just a priestess. She is a bridge between the god who came and the serpent that never left. You begin to understand now why the sanctuary feels tense, like a drawn bow. Because this is not a place of peace, it is a place of negotiation, of energy exchange, of competing forces. And in the middle stands a woman who has trained her entire being to become invisible, to empty herself, to vanish, so that something greater might speak through her. You walk past the Castalian Spring, a crystal clear waterfall hidden in the rock. This is where the oracle bathes before each prophecy. It is icy, purifying, shocking to the skin. Every visitor must wash here, even you. As the cold water runs over your hands, your breath catches. A sense of disorientation. Or is it anticipation? You're not sure anymore. Everything here feels suspended in time, like the mountain is holding its breath. And you wonder, when the oracle speaks, what really happens? Is she faking it? Is it theater? Or could there be truth to it? Skeptics throughout history have laughed at the idea. But here's something they can't explain away. Why did Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle all revere the oracle? Why did generals alter battle plans based on her words? Why did emperors consult her before war? Why did people, educated people, believe so completely? Because they saw something. Not just performance, but presence. A kind of psychological state that defies logic. And maybe, just maybe, touches the divine. You now stand just outside the temple. The wind has died down. There are no birds, only the rustle of laurel leaves. A priest approaches. His eyes scan you, not unkindly, but seriously. You're being measured, not for wealth, not for beauty, but for sincerity. Are you here to flatter the god or to receive him? If the answer is the former, you may leave with a riddle. If it's the latter, you may never be the same again. He opens the gate. You step forward, and the temple swallows you whole. Who were the oracles? A deep dive into the real women chosen as Pythias, where they came from, how they were chosen, and what kind of lives they led behind the veil of mystery. The stories say she was a virgin, or a widow, or both. Some say she was chosen young, others say she was a matron, wise and experienced. The truth, as always, is layered, elusive, hidden behind centuries of myth, fear, and reverence. But one thing is certain, she was human. The oracle, the Pythia, was not a goddess. She bled, laughed, aged, and died. She may have had children. She may have mourned them. She may have come from poverty or been the daughter of a respected family. What she gave up was herself, and what she became was something the world had never seen. To be chosen as the Oracle of Delphi was not like being elected or appointed. You didn't apply, you were called. Sometimes the signs were divine, a dream, a vision, a trance. Sometimes it was a fit, what we now call a seizure or an unexplainable knowing, a prophecy spoken in sleep. These were not the things to hide in ancient Greece. They were sacred. They meant you were touched by the gods. And once the priests were certain, once they had tested you, watched you, perhaps even manipulated you, you were brought to the temple. Your old life ended at the threshold. The first Pythias may have been young virgins, pure in the eyes of Apollo. But after one was abducted by a visitor, the rules changed. From then on, the oracle was usually a postmenopausal woman, chosen for her wisdom, emotional stability, and perhaps most importantly, her detachment from earthly desire. She became a vessel, not a woman. But here's where it gets complicated, because even though the Pythia was seen as a mouthpiece of the god, she also had immense power. Political power, religious power, psychological power. Her words could sway kings, redirect wars, anoint rulers, and yet she owned nothing. She made no laws. She was not worshipped. She was used. What did that do to her? Imagine living in a temple, never alone, but never truly yourself. You're guarded, groomed, watched. Every word you speak outside of trance is weighed for meaning. You're not allowed to show doubt, or weakness, or pride. You belong to the god, but also to the state. Because, make no mistake, Delphi was not just a religious center. It was a geopolitical force, a neutral ground where city-states gathered, a place of diplomacy, espionage, and strategy. And you are the centerpiece, the oracle, the mystery no one can touch. But were there many oracles? Yes and no. There was only one Pythia at a time, but the role passed from woman to woman, generation after generation, for over 1,000 years. We don't know most of their names, only a few have survived. Phenomenon, Aristoclea, Themistoclea, names carved in crumbling inscriptions, whispered in half-remembered poems. But every one of them shared something rare, the ability to enter altered states of consciousness, to trance, to detach, to dissolve the ego, whether by training, trauma, or something else entirely. They were not actresses, they believed. It's easy to imagine the oracle as a tool, a puppet for priests, but that's too simple. Modern scholars and psychologists who have studied trance states say something different. The Pythia was not pretending. Her mind was not being controlled. It was being accessed. She was quite literally in another state of being. Her breath slowed. Her heartbeat changed. Her sense of time blurred. She became, as many mystics describe, both herself and less. A medium, a liminal thing, a boundary dissolver. This was not something any woman could do. It required training, discipline, emotional resilience, and perhaps a tendency toward the dissociative, a mind already open to possession, visions, or altered awareness. We might call it madness, they call it sacred. Inside the temple, the Pythia had her own quarters, sparse, silent, deeply ritualized. She bathed in the Castalian Spring each morning. She fasted before every prophecy. She chewed the leaves of the laurel, Apollo's tree, believed to sharpen the mind and open the spirit. And she waited until the god arrived, or until the questions did. She was not alone during prophecy. Around her stood the priests of Apollo, trained interpreters who transcribed, clarified, and often translated her words into responses the questioners could understand. Some believe the priests shaped the prophecies, twisting the oracle's fragmented utterances into politically convenient riddles. Others believe they were simply guides helping make sense of the divine chaos pouring from her mouth. Either way, the Pythia's voice, trembling, cryptic, half sung, was at the center, and the world listened. One more thing, the Pythia was not allowed to speak whenever she wished. She gave prophecies only one day a month, for 9 months a year. That's right, the oracle was silent for 3 months every winter. Why? Because Apollo left Delphi during that time. The god himself, they said, went to the land of Hyperboreans, a mystical place beyond the north wind, and the temple was left to Dionysus, god of ecstasy and madness. In those months, Delphi became something else, and the oracle waited, or rested, or dreamed. Imagine the pressure. One day a month, hundreds of questioners, each one expecting answers that could change their lives. Each one staring at you as you breathe deep, tremble, and speak in tongues. Some weep when you speak, some rage, some fall to their knees, and you are never quite sure of what you have said. Because here's the deepest truth of all. The oracle didn't remember. Many reports tell us that the Pythia once the trance lifted, had no recollection of what she had said, as if another voice truly had spoken through her, as if herself, her conscious identity, had vanished like mist, burned off by the morning sun. And that's what makes her so haunting. Not just the power, but the disappearance. She was not a fraud. She was not a witch. She was not a saint. She was something rarer. A woman who willingly dissolved herself over and over so others could believe they were hearing the will of a god. Becoming the Pythia. Step into her sandals. What happens the moment a woman is chosen? You're 19 years old. You live in a quiet village not far from the sea. Your father is a shepherd, your mother a weaver. You've always been a strange child, not wrong, not sick, just different. You stare too long at the fire. You speak truths no one has told you. You dream of people you've never met, and sometimes wake up weeping for them. No one taught you how to do this. No one can. One day, your name is whispered at a local shrine. A priest visits, then another. You are watched, questioned, brought to Delphi. You thought they might send you home. They don't. Instead, they gave you white robes. They give you silence. And they give you a new name. You are no longer who you were. You are Pythia. Becoming the oracle is not a moment. It's a process, a shedding of self. First, you're bathed over and over, not just for cleanliness, for purification. Sacred water from Castalian Spring runs over your skin until your old name, your old fears, your old life are washed away. Then come the rites. You're instructed in temple protocols, not speech exactly. You won't be expected to form coherent sentences, but posture, gesture, energy. How to breathe through fear, how to let go, and how to wait, because waiting is what an oracle does. She sits in silence for days at a time with no guarantee that a vision will come. She learns patience and she learns surrender. Your diet is changed. Light foods, nothing impure, no meat. Laurel leaves are chewed daily, bitter and sharp, but somehow clarifying. Some say laurel is mildly psychoactive, others say it's symbolic. Either way, it becomes a part of you. And then the trance training begins. No one speaks of it directly. It's not written down. But across history, cultures have taught trance in subtle embodied ways. Through rhythm, repetition, breath. You're taught to stare at flames until your vision splits. You're taught to listen for silence inside sound. You're taught to sit in darkness until you forget where your body ends and the air begins. You're not being taught to perform. You're being taught to disappear. And through it all, there are the priests. Not cruel, not kind, just watchful. They are the intermediaries, not between you and the God, but between you and the world. They interpret, translate, shape the words that come out of you into words that make sense. But make no mistake, you are the source. they orbit you. At some point, the question is asked, are you ready? You don't know what that means. You say yes anyway. The first time you descend into the Adyton, the sacred inner chamber of the temple, your hands are trembling. You feel cold, or maybe too warm. You've been fasting. You've been silent. You've been dreaming in symbols for days. You're led down stone steps deeper into the earth. Torches flicker. The scent of burned resin fills the air. And then, there it is, the tripod, bronze, three-legged, balanced over the sacred chasm. You are helped into it. Your feet rest lightly on the stone. You hold laurel branches in your hands. You begin to breathe deeply, slowly, rhythmically, and then you wait. It has no name. You've heard whispers that it is sweet, narcotic, otherworldly, that it comes from the breath of the earth herself, that it brings madness, or visions, or both. You don't know what's real. You only know what happens next. Your mind begins to drift, not like sleep, more like flight. You feel your body grow light, and then heavy, and then you forget where it is entirely. The voices come slowly at first, shapes more than sounds, then syllables, then something else. You don't remember speaking, but you are speaking, and you are not alone. To those watching, your body begins to tremble. Your eyes roll back. Your voice shifts, lower or higher than usual, distorted, almost melodic. You speak in fragments, images, warnings, descriptions that make no logical sense. The priests are writing rapidly, calmly. They do not stop you. Your mouth closes. Your body stills. You return. You're helped down from the tripod. Sweat clings to your skin. Your throat is dry. You have no memory of what you said, but the priests bow, and the questioner weeps. You have spoken the word of the god. You are Pythia now, no longer in training, no longer uncertain. You've crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed, and the world will never speak your name the same way again. But that is only the beginning, because to become the oracle is not just to perform a rite. It is to live as the oracle, always. You cannot leave the sanctuary. You cannot take lovers. You cannot unsee what you have seen. Every month you will descend. Every month the God will come. And every time you'll give a little more of yourself away, until there's nothing left but the voice. And yet you do it willingly, because in that moment, in that fire, in that trance, that holy forgetting, you feel something else, a kind of union, a kind of ecstasy, a kind of peace that no other life could have given you. You're no longer a girl from a fishing village. You are the bridge between worlds, the eye in the mist, the voice in the silence, the mind of the oracle. Fame, fear, and worship. What was it like to be seen as the oracle? How did the world treat her? reverence, fear, obsession, and the strange isolation of being holy. She walks through the courtyard, heads bow, voices hush, even birds seem to still. She wears no crown, no jewels, no emblems of power, but all recognize her because she is the oracle, the one who speaks for the god, and that makes her something more than human and less. To the outside world, the Pythia is a mystery wrapped in flesh, a holy woman, a living conduit, a sacred tool, and because of that, no one treats her like a person. They approach her with reverence, not warmth, with worship, but not kindness, with fear, but not love. Imagine the isolation. You walk among others, but you are never with them. You sit at feasts, but no one jokes with you. You pass through the temple garden, but no one calls your name. Because your old name is gone. You're not Sophia, or Callista, or Eon anymore. You are Pythia. And Pythia is not supposed to smile. In rare moments, you catch whispers behind your back. She's the one who said my husband would drown. She's the one who warned the king. She sees things, and always don't look her in the eyes, as if your gaze might crack their soul open, as if your breath might summon a curse. You didn't ask for this, but now you carry it, the burden of being believed. Not like a priest or a scholar, but like a force of nature, like lightning in human form. There is a shrine in the sanctuary, not to Apollo, but to you. Offerings are placed there, small ones, coins, beads, scraps of handwritten prayers. You don't touch them, you're not allowed. They are for the image of you, not for you. A statue of a woman in a seated pose, eyes closed, mouth slightly open as if mid utterance. You don't recognize yourself in the statue, but the world does. That's the version of you they worship. Children are told stories about you, that you were born with a call, that you spoke to birds, that you cannot be lied to. None of it is true. All of it is more powerful than truth, because it protects the mystery, and the mystery must be protected. Sometimes women from nearby villages come to leave you gifts. They don't approach, they leave them in the garden. Ribbons, carved laurel leaves, dried figs. They say you're lucky, or cursed, or both. You never speak to them, you just watch them from the shadowed colonnade. You wonder if they know you wish some days to be like them, ordinary, able to laugh loudly, able to cry publicly, able to be touched without ritual. But you are untouchable. That is your role. That is your cage. Fame in Delphi is not like fame today. It does not bring luxury. It brings expectation. You must not fail. You must not falter. You must not contradict yourself or the God. And if you do, You will not be punished outright. You will simply be replaced, silently, ceremonially, and the world will continue as if you never existed. There is no legacy, no monument with your name. The Pythia is eternal, but the woman beneath her, eclipsed. Sometimes you're called to bless a festival, to walk in silence behind a priest, trailing incense and silence. Crowds part before you like water. Some avert their eyes. Some reach toward you, hoping just to brush the edge of your robe. One child once called out to you, "Are you the moon?" You smiled, and a priest whispered harshly, "Don't answer." There is worship, but there is also fear. A quiet fear that you might see what others hide. That you might speak a sentence that unravels their life. That you might say something they can't forget. So they keep their distance, even those who adore you, especially them. You have no friends. The other temple women treat you with awe and detachment. They serve you, feed you, bathe you when needed, but they don't talk to you. They do not ask what it's like. Perhaps they are afraid you'll answer. Perhaps they know you can't. Only the old priest, the one who trained you, ever meets your gaze directly. He once said, when you were young, "The God does not break women. He hollows them, and what's left behind is light." You didn't understand it then. Now you do. Being Pythia is not painful most days, but it is lonely. Not the loneliness of neglect, but the loneliness of elevation, of being placed too high on the pedestal to ever climb down. You are seen by all, but known by none. And yet, there's a quiet power in it, a dignity, a strange, fierce pride. Because when you speak, when the God moves through you, the world stops. When you close your eyes, kings wait. When you open your mouth, cities tremble. And for those few moments, you are not alone. You are everything. You are the voice of something too vast for names. And in that, you are free. But when the trance ends and the room is quiet, when your breath returns and your body aches, when you walk back to your chamber in silence, passing through corridors of worship, you wonder, will anyone ever love the woman behind the voice? Her mind between madness and divinity. Was the oracle holy? Mentally ill? Something in between? What happens to a person who lives between reality and vision for a lifetime? She is silent, not because she has nothing to say, but because she no longer knows where thought ends and prophecy begins. This is the reality of the oracle, year after year, to live on the threshold, to float in the space between sanity and sacredness, to be praised for visions that in another life might earn a cage. The ancient Greeks had a word, mania. It meant more than madness. It meant divine frenzy, a kind of inspired ecstasy that came not from disease, but from the gods. There were two types: pathological mania, born of illness, grief, trauma, and prophetic mania, the holy fire that burned through poets, seers, and yes, the Pythia. To outsiders, her trance may have looked like seizure, body shaking, eyes wild, mouth babbling. To modern eyes, it might resemble temporal lobe epilepsy or dissociative identity disorder or schizophrenia in a ritualized frame. But to those in Delphi, it was divine access. Here's the truth: the line between madness and mysticism is razor thin. What saves the oracle is not her mind, but the container around it. She is protected by ritual, by meaning, by thousands of years of belief. She is not a danger to herself or others, because her states are not random. They are invited, cued by incense, fasting, chanting, breath. This is the great paradox. The oracle descends into chaos through order. Modern psychology calls this a controlled altered state. It is not psychosis, it is induction, structured, repeatable, ceremonial dissociation. Her ego loosens, but does not shatter. Her sense of self vanishes, but does not disintegrate. She comes back every time, though never quite the same. She's learned to recognize the early signs, the pressure behind her eyes, like a storm forming, the ringing in her ears, as if a bell had been struck in another realm, the flutter in her ribs, not fear, but something older. Some days it comes without ritual, just a flash, a vision during sleep, a word that lingers on her tongue for hours. She swallows it down. She waits for the appointed day. But the border grows thinner with time. What does it do to a person to live in that twilight state, to exist as a bridge between worlds? Some oracles age gracefully, others fade early, worn thin by the burning of visions. A few, we suspect, slipped too far. There are records, barely more than whispers, of oracles who became erratic, who stopped speaking in riddles and started screaming, who gave prophecies unprompted, who saw gods where there were none. They were quietly replaced. No punishment, no scandal, just removed, like a cracked vessel set aside. But most, they walked the line, delicately, beautifully, like tightrope dancers above the void. To be an oracle is not to be sane, nor insane. It is to exist in a third category, sacred altered being. Anthropologists today study similar figures across cultures: the Siberian shaman, the Yoruba priestess in trance, the Amazonian ayahuasca, all exhibit what researchers call adaptive dissociation. They enter deep altered states but return with knowledge, healing, vision, and society rewards them as long as they return. What makes the oracle different is the scale of her influence. She does not serve a village, she serves a civilization, and so the expectations are greater, the pressure heavier, the scrutiny sharper. She cannot afford madness. She must maintain the illusion of divine control, even when her body trembles, even when the god will not come, even when she begins to wonder, am I still the vessel, or am I just the echo? There are quiet moments when she feels the crack forming, when memory slips, when faces blur, when she wakes from dreams and doesn't know what century it is. But no one sees this because the oracle is not allowed weakness, only wonder. She has no diagnosis. There is no Hippocratic term for what she is. But she has a soul that burns like a lantern with too much oil. It flares, it flickers, it devours itself to shine. And some part of her likes it. Not because she's addicted to madness, but because in that space, that holy, breathless chamber between selves, she is free. Free from judgment, free from gender, from history. In trance, she becomes pure force, not a woman, not a name, just voice. But voice comes at a cost, and the cost is continuity. She no longer remembers the rhythm of an ordinary life, the warmth of unstructured laughter, the peace of days without prophecy. Her inner world is fragmented, stitched together with symbols, and yet she remains whole. Not despite the breakage, but because of it. That is the mind of the oracle, not a cracked mirror, a kaleidoscope, spinning, fractured, beautiful, and every now and then perfectly aligned to catch the light of the divine. When the god left the temple, what happened when the oracle grew silent? Why did Delphi fade? The final centuries of prophecy and the slow retreat of mystery from the world. Every fire burns brightest before it fades. Delphi had burned for over 1,000 years, a century of riddles, rituals, and revelation. But no empire lasts forever, and even gods, it seems, can fall silent. It did happen all at once. There was no grand collapse, no enemy siege, no dramatic curse cast from heaven. What happened to Delphi was slower, a withering, a gradual quieting of something once thunderous. The world changed, and the oracle could not stay the same. First came the Romans. They conquered Greece, but they didn't destroy Delphi. In fact, many Roman leaders revered the oracle. Some sought her guidance. Others used her reputation to legitimize their rule. Delphi adapted, She translated her symbols into Latin. Her priests studied Roman law and custom. But something began to shift. The questions became less spiritual, more transactional. Not what does the God will, but how do I win favor in the Senate? Not shall I build a temple, but shall I raise taxes on olive oil? The oracle answered, she always did, but the dawn of Delphi changed. The air was heavier, the smoke thinner, the questions shallower, and the gods do not thrive on shallow ground. Then came skepticism, not the healthy doubt of a curious mind, but the cold dissection of a culture outgrowing its own myths. Philosophers began to whisper, is it really the God who speaks? Statesmen begin to ask, who writes the oracle's answers? The priesthood tightened its grip, but it was already too late. The mystery was unraveling. And yet the Pythia still sat on her tripod. She still chewed the laurel, still breathed in the sacred vapors, still spoke in riddles, in fire, in fragments. She did her duty. Even the crowds grew thinner, even as the tributes diminished, even as the world turned away. The final blow did not come from a rival king. It came from a new God. With the rise of Christianity, the ancient world began to shift on its axis. The new faith was fierce, monotheistic, and deeply hostile to pagan ritual. Prophecy was not abandoned but centralized. Prophets now came from scripture, not smoke. Visions came through saints, not serpents. The oracle was rebranded, not as a sacred voice, but as sorcery, a threat, a relic of a sinful past. By the 4th century CE, Delphi was all but abandoned. The temple fell into ruin. The statues were looted, the altars overgrown. The spring still flowed, but no one drank from it. The god had gone, and the woman who carried his voice had no one left to listen. One of the last recorded oracles gave a chilling prophecy, perhaps real, perhaps apocryphal. Tell the king the fair-wrought hall has fallen. No longer does Phoebus have his house, nor the prophetic spring, nor the laurel. The voice is stilled, the smoke is dead. It is finished. 5 lines, 1,000 years of prophecy folded into a single farewell. The silence that followed was deafening. The mountains still stood. The wind still moved the trees, but the sacred hum was gone. The trance had ended. And yet, Delphi did not vanish entirely. Even as Christianity spread, even as temples were torn down, the stories lingered. Pilgrims still visited the ruins. Whispers still floated through mountain paths. Here, the god once spoke. Children played where the priests once walked. They said, if you stood very still, you could hear the oracle's last breath echoing in the stone. Centuries passed. Empires rose and fell, and Delphi slept. covered in dust, forgotten by maps, remembered only in myth. Until one day, a group of archaeologists arrived. They began to dig, and what they found stunned them. The temple, the inscriptions, the layers of offering pits, gold, bone, scrolls, and then finally the chasm itself, the place where Oracle once sat, where the vapors had risen, where the world had once waited for a woman to speak. Some claimed the vapors were real, traces of ethylene gas rising from fault lines. Others said it didn't matter because what had been created here was not chemical. It was cultural, spiritual, human. 1,000 years of people believing they had touched the divine, and in doing so, making it true. The god may have left, but the voice remains, etched in stone, in memory, in every question we still ask today. What's going to happen to me? Am I on the right path? Can I trust what I see? These are not modern questions, they are Delphic. And even now, in our world of satellites and science, we still seek oracles. We still listen to voices. We still consult algorithms, horoscopes, therapists, tarot readers, statistics, dreams. Because we are still human, still longing, still trembling on the edge of the unknown. And in the silence of Delphi, in the ruins and shadows, the question remains, what did the oracle say in that final moment as the god slipped away? Did she weep or did she smile? Maybe she saw what we still don't, that even silence can be sacred, that mystery doesn't die, it only changes shape, and that somewhere, on some distant wind, the god still speaks. The oracle in modern eyes. How psychology, neuroscience, and culture now reinterpret the oracle's role and why her story still matters in the age of reason. The oracle in modern eyes. She no longer sits on a tripod. No laurel, no robes, no sacred fumes. But her presence lingers, not in the mountains of Delphi, but in the folds of our culture, our science, our minds. The oracle has become a ghost, but not a forgotten one, because today we are still asking the same questions she once answered. We've just changed the language. Today, we call it psychology, neuroscience, therapy. But what are we really trying to understand? The mind in trance, the voice that isn't quite ours, the strange clarity that arises in altered states. In laboratories across the world, scientists are studying the mechanics of prophecy, not to prove it wrong, but to understand what it was. Researchers have scanned the brains of mystics, shamans, monks, and mediums. They have found commonalities. A drop in prefrontal cortex activity, the part responsible for ego and narrative identity. A rise in theta waves, the dreamlike rhythm of deep meditation and trance. Change in temporal lobe function, often associated with visionary experiences, déjà vu, and spiritual ecstasy. In short, the brain in prophecy changes state. It doesn't mean the visions are false. It means they are real within the person, just as real as fear, memory, love, and often just as transformative. Some scientists now believe the oracle may have entered what's called a hypnagogic state, the liminal space between wakefulness and sleep, where symbols flood consciousness and rationality dissolves. Others compare her trance to the effects of psychoactive plants or ritual breathwork. Still others argue she tapped into deep intuition, a kind of unconscious pattern recognition encoded through years of sensory input and cultural absorption. Was she speaking to gods? Or simply reaching parts of herself most of us never touch? And then there's the cultural side. Sociologists and anthropologists see the oracle as a social function, a mechanism for collective decision making, a symbolic center where power, belief, and myth converged. They say the oracle wasn't just a woman, she was a system, a place where the unknowable was given form and therefore made livable. Because what do humans fear the most? The unknown. We fear death, uncertainty, change, choice. And the oracle stood precisely in that gap, offering riddles in place of terror, symbols instead of silence. She didn't erase the unknown, she made it speakable. This perhaps is her most enduring legacy. Because we do this still, every time we consult an astrologer, or open a tarot deck, or run a data analysis, or ask a therapist, "What do you think this means?" We are seeking an oracle, someone or something to reflect our lives back to us in ways we cannot yet name. And it's not foolish, it's human. Even in a world of satellites and particle colliders, we are still story driven beings. We still respond to metaphor, symbol, trance. We still long for sacred speech. In fact, many therapists today function as modern oracles, not in costume, but in practice. They sit in quiet rooms. They listen to our questions, the real ones, not the surface ones. And when they answer, they rarely give direct advice. Instead, they reflect. They ask strange questions. They speak in gentle riddles because healing is not linear and revelation is rarely literal. Even AI, in a strange way, has become an oracle. You type a question into a screen, you receive an answer. Not always clear, not always comforting, but often profound. The machine does not know you, but its patterns touch something inside you, and you feel seen. Is that so different from Delphi? Of course, skeptics scoff. They say, "You have no need for oracles now. We have logic, data, proof." But they are wrong. Because data does not answer. Should I leave? Do they love me? Am I on the right path? For that, we still need mystery. We still need voices that don't speak plainly, but speak deeply. The oracle endures because she represents a part of the human soul that refuses to die, the part that longs for meaning, that reaches beyond reason, that believes something larger might be listening. So we keep her alive in dreams, in stories, in ourselves. Modern poets write her into verse. Filmmakers give her new faces. Psychologists quote her riddles. And in every sacred space, whether a church, a circle, a therapy room, or a quiet morning alone, we wait for the symbol, for the sign, for the voice. And sometimes it comes, not from above, not from below, but from within. A flicker, a phrase, a knowing, and we say, I understand now. I've heard the answer. The God has spoken. If you were the oracle, close your eyes. Breathe slowly. Imagine you're sitting on the cold bronze tripod. Your hands tremble slightly. Your robes whisper against your skin. The laurel leaves rest in your lap. Their bitter taste still on your tongue. You can smell the earth, the oil lamp smoke, the faintest trace of something sweet and metallic in the air. And the people wait. You feel it before you see it, that deep shifting inside your chest. Not fear, not quiet, more like the ground opening beneath your feet. Your thoughts begin to slow, then dissolve. You're not unconscious, you are something else, suspended, soft, vast. And in that space, that trembling silence, a voice begins. Not loud, not with words, but with feeling. You don't translate it, you become it. If you were the oracle, you would learn how much you must let go of identity, of certainty, of being seen as human. Because the world doesn't want a woman on a stool. It wants a symbol, a mystery, a map to the unseen. You would give everything, and in return, you would become a kind of mirror, one that doesn't reflect faces, but souls. People would bring you their secrets, their desperation, their final hopes, and you would speak something back. Not answers, not solutions, but sentences shaped like riddles that carry weight like stones. If you were the oracle, you would see time in strange ways. You would feel threads of potential features swirling around each question. And you would know none of them are fixed. There is no fate carved in stone, only choice and consequence. You would begin to lose track of yourself, not in madness, but in multiplicity. The self becomes a wheel, and the God, whatever that means, moves through you like wind through grass. Sometimes you would speak something so beautiful, it brings a king to tears. Sometimes you speak something so vague, they accuse you of trickery. But you wouldn't argue, because you didn't choose the words, they chose you. And when it was over, you would sit in silence, your mouth dry, your soul stretched thin, like skin pulled over light. You wouldn't remember what you said, only that you said it truly, and that it mattered. You would walk back to your chamber slowly, avoiding the eyes of those who now revere you. You would remove your robes, wash your face, stare at your reflection in a bronze bowl, and wonder, am I still here? If you were the oracle, you would carry loneliness like a second skin. You would carve ordinary things, laughter, forgetfulness, touch. But those are not for you now. You belong to the mountain, to the questioners, to the God. But here's the secret. You would also feel a kind of freedom no one else knows. Because you've seen beneath the surface. You have stepped through the veil. You have watched words form out of smoke. And you understand something most never will. There is more to this world than what we see. There is a voice inside us we are trained to ignore. And sometimes the answers are already there. You would sleep lightly, dreaming in riddles, and wake not fully remembering where you are, but knowing that someone somewhere will come soon, asking a question they cannot bear to answer themselves. And you, the oracle, will not answer it either. You will give them something stranger, something deeper, a sentence that doesn't solve the problem, but opens it like a flower. If you were the oracle, you would learn that truth is not a hammer. It is a key, and that key cannot be handed to someone. It must be found inside them. You are not the answer. You are the spark that leads them to it. And when you're old, older than you ever expected to become, when your voice is hoarse and your body aches, and the God no longer comes quite as often, you will sit at the edge of the temple garden and watch the wind move through the laurel trees and feel deep inside your quiet soul that you have done your work, not perfectly, but faithfully. Because if you were the oracle, you would know it was never about being right. It was about being true. The final candle flickers. The last scroll is rolled shut. The mountain sighs, and the voice goes quiet. But listen, now, wherever you are, in your room, in your mind, in your own silence, you can still hear the echo. It is in your breath, in your dreams, in that whisper you hear when the world goes still. And if you ask a question, not with words, but with your whole being, the answer will come. Not in logic, not in proof, but in symbol, in vision, in something only you can understand. You are the seeker, and you are the oracle.